Hey guys, now we're going to go through the second task, creating our first bass line. So in this task, we're going to go to our OneNote page and look at the important stuff. So this is found in the Music Producer tab. Important stuff like knowing our key signatures, okay? And we can do this through the circle of fifths. So yes, this is not a circle. This is a list that we've taken from a circle of fifths. Normally this list is in a circle shape for musicians, but I've put it into a list to make it a bit more easier to follow. What we're going to do is we're going to look at the left-hand column where we have the name of our key. So when we're producing music, we pick a key that we're working within, and then we look at the notes that correspond with that key. So you can see here, if I'm working in the key of C, we have got all the notes over here that will work for C. Okay, if we go down the list, you'll see that we start adding what we call accidentals. And as you can see on the G key, we've got an F sharp. Going further down, we can see every step down the list, we add an extra sharp to our key signature until we get to our flats. So for this production series, just stick within the keys that have the sharps. We'll work in flats a bit later, but yeah, you don't have to worry about that for now. So once we've chosen a key, so this example, I'm going to be producing in the key of C. So you can see I've got C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C for the notes that I can select. And now it's time to actually start producing some sound. So I'm going to take you through the process of producing a bass line. So the first thing we need to do is create a track in our production. So I'm going to find a sound. It's going to go with that one. And I'm going to create a new track for it to be written on. So I'm going to insert a MIDI track, and you can see it's up here. I'm going to rename it. Okay, so I'm going to rename it bass. Okay, so I've got my track. I'm going to double click in the first clip selection slot to make a MIDI clip. And now I'm going to go to my instrument view and load up my sound. So I've got my sound here, so I'm drag and drop it down onto my instrument rack, and we're good to go. Now I'm going to double click on the MIDI clip, and this is where we're going to input our data. Okay, so we've got our sound sets here. With our bass sounds, there's a couple of rules to start following. So bass line normally or generally as a rule of thumb, a bass line will have one note being played at a time. And we're going to be down in the low frequencies, so somewhere around the low Cs, so between C0 and C2. So now that we've got our sound, we've got to come up with a rhythm that will work. So I think the best way to start when we're starting out writing music is to start with a drum beat. So I've got a pattern over here that I've produced. Let me just remove that out of the way. Okay, so you can see this pattern here. If I play it for you, you should get an idea of how it sounds. So I've got 4 bars. Okay, so it's a 4-bar sequence. I'm going to just take the hi-hats. So those hi-hat sounds. All right, I'm going to take those. I'm going to copy them. And I'm only going to copy 1 bar. All right, so go and copy them. And now I'm going to go back to my clip view, select the bass clip I want to insert them into. Make sure I'm at the start of the bar, and I'm going to go edit and paste. Okay, so we've got the notes of that drum beat. Okay, now we've got the bass lines going with it. I don't want them to be changing notes at the moment, so I'm going to make sure all of the notes are on the same key. Okay, and now you can see it's entered in on F sharp. So F sharp does not belong to the key of C. Okay, so you can see we've got an F natural. So we're just going to drop it all down to the F. Now, what we're looking at here is 1 bar of 4 beats. Okay, so if I play that through with the drum beat, and I'll launch my clip. it's not in time with the music that I've got. So the hi-hats actually start on the and. So halfway through beat 1 on the and. So I'm going to move everything back to be in time now. Let's have a listen to that now. All right, you can hear it's in time with the hi-hats. I'm going to simplify it a little bit. I'm going to get rid of this first downbeat on the second beat. Okay, the downbeat on the second beat. So let's have a listen to that. Yeah. Okay, it's not as cluttered. It sort of sits with it. Okay, now we've got our rhythm. What we're going to do is produce a drum beat over a sequence. Okay, and when we're talking about a sequence, we kind of start thinking about a chord progression. A chord progression being a series of notes, 2 or more notes being played at the same time. And when we think about chord progressions, the bass line is very closely related to the chord progression. Normally, when we start out, we'll take the bass line and that will be playing the fundamental note or the root note of the chord. So what we're going to do is have a look at our key signature, and we're going to make a selection of notes or chords that we will play. Now, if you don't know how to make chords yet, that's going to come next. So all we're going to do is choose the root note for our chord progression through our bass line. So I'm going to start on the A. Okay, that's going to be my first bar. Then in the second bar, I might go up to the E, and then perhaps to the F, and then we'll drop down to the C for the fourth and final bar. Okay, so the other notes, I'm going to go A, E, F, C. All right, now let's go back to Ableton. So right now we're looking at only one bar. So we've got to change the length of our sequence and add more bars. So over here on the left, you'll see length of the bars. So we're going to set it to 4 whole bars. All right, so now you can see our views changed a little bit. Our darker grey area is just indicating where our first bar is, and our lighter grey area is our second bar, third bar, and fourth bar. If we zoom in, you can see that the shading system changes. So this is bar 1, and you can see we're now looking at the first beat is dark, the second beat is light, etc., etc. So you can use the shading to indicate where you are, depending on how far in you're zoomed in and out of things. So right now I've got an overview of the 4-bar sequence. I'm going to just copy and the bass line over to the next bar. All right, so we'll do that for all bars. Now, let's select the first bar, and I said I was going to start on the A note. So there's our A. I think I might drag it down. There we go, that lower octave sounds better. The second chord I said was going to be an E. All right, so let's go to there. And then the third chord was an F. And then our final chord, we drop down to a C. Okay, let's see how we go with that. So let's listen to that result. All right, so that low C sounds really muddy and too low, so let's slide that up to the C octave up. All right, that sounds pretty good. So essentially how we create a bass line is choose a pattern that's from your drum beat and copy that over into 1 bar, copy that across to your 4 bars, and then using those notes, go and select the notes in your key signature to create a sequence for your root notes. Now that's a reasonable phrase or a reasonable line, but there's a couple of things just finally to touch on. And so the first rule that we're going to think about is the distance between the notes. So A to E. Okay, so going from A to E, that's a distance of a fifth. Now, if we look at our key signature, so if we literally count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, so that's a movement of a fifth. And then if we look at our C to F, okay, that's a movement of a fourth on our key signature. Let's have a look at that. So C to F, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. So what we need to do is avoid moving in fourths or fifths. Okay, literally just counting up and down the key signature from your lowest note to the highest note. Okay, so the reason why that is because it kind of is deemed a little bit boring. And there's a really simple, easy way to work around that. All we need to do is just choose one of the last notes. So the last note in that bar, we're going to move it up to another note. So just using your ears, find a note that works for you. Okay, you can hear now that the movement, it has a bit of melodic movement rising up to the next note. And we can do so between the C and the F is a movement of a fourth. So we can actually move that note. We could go up to change that distance, or we can move it down, or we could even go lower. So moving it just down beneath the note, and it kind of steps it down below and then up to the target note. Let's just have a listen to that. I didn't really like that B. I think I'll go back to the A. Now, now that we've added movement in, sometimes that's setting an expectation for our ears. And for me, I heard that in the second bar, that last note, I wanted it to change. So I'm going to change it now. All right. That sounds all right. I'll try another option. Yeah. All right, and I might, there we go. Keep that movement on the last note happening because that's an expectation that we set up in the first bar. It creates a pattern or a rhythmic motif. So fourths and fifths, avoid them. You can create more melodic movement on the rest of your bar, but on the rest of your line. But keep it simple is always a good thing to think about. Another way of moving some bass notes around is also to think about octaves. So we've got the first note, first two notes on the low A, but maybe we'd like the next note to be on the A octave higher. So let's hear that. Yeah, or we could go an octave lower. So there's some ideas for you to explore. The bass line is just that fundamental foundation of your song. So don't get too busy with it because as we layer up other sounds and effects, if you have a really busy bass line, it can really lose impact or it just sort of gets in the way of everything else you're trying to write. So enjoy making your own bass lines in this task and hope you have a bit of success with it.